Well, thank you very much for having me. I think October 7th or the events on October 7th will definitely change the region for better or worse, but they will definitely change the entire region. It will not only impact Israel and the OPTs, but beyond that. In the immediate, I guess what we see is rising tensions around the borders with Israel. Whether we're talking about clashes along the Lebanese border with Hezbollah and Palestinian militias present in southern Lebanon, or more interestingly, I guess, is the shootings every now and then that happen from inside Syria into the Golan Heights, which has been a very cold front since 1973 and the disengagement agreement between Syria and Israel. So the regional tensions are definitely mounting. We also see, the rhetoric completely changing across the region, starting with Turkey, where we thought Turkey was going back to its zero problems policy. We saw the meeting between President Erdogan and Prime Minister Netanyahu in the summer on the sidelines of Anga in the Turkish house in New York, and as a way of normalizing the relationship between the Turkish government and the Israeli government. But obviously, all of that is gone now. President Erdogan tried to intervene in the early days of the conflict, of the current conflict, and talk to President Erdogan, but that didn't lead very far. And the rhetoric coming out of Turkey completely changed very quickly, and we saw the amount of mobilization that the AKP and its affiliates are doing in Turkey against Israel and in support of Gaza. So that's one aspect definitely to watch on how the development of the Turkish-Israeli relationship will be. We also have the wider region that is also in a very difficult position. I'm mainly talking about the Arab normalization process with Israel. The countries that have already normalized, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, but also in Sudan, but also countries that were in the process of normalizing, and of course Saudi Arabia. And we saw Saudi Arabia taking a leadership role, let's say, in trying to counter the Israeli narrative, whether through its media, its different media channels, but also calling for an emergency summit of the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation that was held on the 11th of November in Riyadh. We also saw Raisi, the president of Iran, in Riyadh for the first time. I think an Iranian president visited Riyadh in more than 10 years. So definitely the dynamics in the region are completely shifting, and clear alliances that existed before October 7th are now put in question again. This is mainly driven, I guess, by the U.S. Staunch support to the Israeli invasion and attack on Gaza, but also by the European, let's say, change of, I wouldn't say change of hearts, but at least the European mixed reaction to the onslaught after October 7th. I mean, obviously, what happened in October 7th is despicable. Everybody agrees on that. But the reaction to that is what is being questioned. Everybody brings the question of proportionality, et cetera, and then how do you fight terrorism with proportionality? That's kind of the big question. But a war is a war, and we know one thing: there's one certainty with a war, is that eventually it will end. And the big question is the day after and what it would look like. It's very hard, to have a crystal ball at the moment and to see what the day after would look like. But at least listening to the different interventions from the different world leaders, it's clear that a Hamas-ruled Gaza is not a possibility anymore. So it seems that one thing for sure is that post-war Hamas will not be ruling Gaza anymore. Who will be ruling Gaza? That's very hard to say, and there are different, interpretations to that. But definitely not Hamas. Now, beyond that, in the region, what would happen to the Arab normalization process is definitely now frozen. Would it pick up or not? Remains to be seen. We've seen that Bahrain, one of the countries that have normalized their relationship with Israel, has recalled its ambassador from Tel Aviv. They haven't declared the Israeli ambassador persona non grata, but they've recalled their ambassador from Tel Aviv. They're reviewing all the economic cooperation agreements they've signed with Israel. And the more this carnage continues, the more pressure there will be on those Arab normalizing countries to back off on their normalization and basically cut ties with the state of Israel. This is definitely not the intention of the leaders, and we saw that very clearly out of the summit, that the issue of normalization was not brought up at all in the summit. In the communique of the summit, it was brought up by some of the leaders, mainly President Raisi of Iran and Bashar al-Assad of Syria, who basically said that the normalization process should be stopped, but in the communique itself, it was not mentioned. And so that's an indication, at least from the Arab leaders, that for now, the normalization process is not in question. However, if this carnage continues and go beyond what we see at the moment, and hospitals are completely taken over by Israel, and we have more massacres in Gaza, it'll be hard to see how the Arabs can continue with that normalization process. So it might be, going back to a period where Israel finds itself in a sea of enemies, let's say, or at least maybe not enemies, but non-friendly actors, which would be, a big setback to all the efforts that were done during the Trump presidency and the Biden administration. But also beyond that, it's looking at as we mentioned, the Turkish-Israeli relationship and how would that develop before October 7th and the terrorist attack by Hamas and the response of Israel. Turkey was normalizing its relationship with Israel. There was supposed to be a meeting between the energy minister of Turkey and the energy minister of Israel to reimagine the pipeline, the project pipeline between Israel and Turkey, and for Turkey to become one of the entry points of Israeli gas into the European market. Now all of that is obviously history, and the relationship has completely soured. But post-war, would Turkey be able to pick up on those negotiations remain to be seen. I think what would be very interesting is to see what kind of Israeli government are we going to have post-war. What seems to be also sure, like Hamas will not be ruling Gaza, Netanyahu will not be ruling Israel, and so it's really what kind of government will we have in Israel, and how will it, approach the relationship with Turkey. Another actor to keep a very close eye on is Hezbollah, and Iranian. People like to describe Hezbollah as an Iranian proxy. I don't fully agree that Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy. Hezbollah is part and parcel of Iran's exporting revolution policy. So it's not really a proxy. It's really part of the Iranian establishment. And Hassan Nasrallah only answers to Khamenei. He doesn't answer to the other establishment of the Islamic Republic. So how would Hassan Nasrallah position himself? I mean, we saw that he's trying to keep the Northern Front busy, but without taking it too far. He's definitely taking all the threats by Israel to just completely annihilate Lebanon very seriously. And he learned from his mistake in 2006. So definitely, maintaining for now the rules of engagement, and remains to be seen how that develops. But beyond that, what would be interesting is to see whether Hezbollah will stick to its signature on the maritime deal between Israel and Lebanon that was signed last year. I mean, the whole idea was for that maritime deal is to allow Total to explore for gas in Lebanese Block 9. Rumors are that Block 9 is now almost surely dry. So will that, drive a different behavior from Hezbollah? Remains to be seen. Would Hezbollah seek to increase its legitimacy by further engaging Israel militarily to kind of, compensate for its signature of that maritime deal that proved, at least the rumors say, proved useless, given that Block 9 is dry? Also remains to be seen. Are we going to see targeting of Israeli gas infrastructure by Hezbollah? We've seen at one point Hezbollah drones over the Tamar field and over Karish. Are we going to see those drones again? And what would that mean in terms of Israeli reaction, response, and energy security overall in the region? So before, what was perceived as a region that is moving towards cooperation before October 7th is now really a region that is boiling in problems and explosions left, right, and center, with a potential for a very disastrous outcome if that war continues. So that's why, for the sake of every country in the region, including Israel, I think it's a necessity to have a ceasefire as soon as possible and to calm spirits down and get back to the negotiation table, because otherwise everybody's security is at risk, not only the Palestinians, but the Syrians, the Lebanese, the Israelis themselves, and the potential for a regional war, if not beyond, is really, really high. Different actors have different interests in investing in that war if it continues. So, but now back to the scenario when the war is over. I think if we get a Israeli government that understands that security for Israeli citizens has to go via a just and lasting peace, and recognizing the rights of the Palestinians for statehood, there is really a huge potential to go back to those different cooperation or coexistence, let's say, mechanisms that existed before the Hamas attack on October 7th. But that will take, a deep commitment from the Israeli establishment to enable the two-state solution, and with a viable Palestinian state, not a Palestinian state that is piecemealed and cut into different pieces by different settlements, or a Palestinian state that is run by Israel. That is not a viable solution. So all really depends on how this war progress and what kind of Israeli governance are we going to get at the end of the war, and whether we will finally, well, whether the Israeli establishment will finally come to the realization that if it wants security, it needs to have a peace agreement, a just peace agreement with the Palestinians. Until that day comes, unfortunately, the risk of escalation, explosion, and regional confrontation remains.